the TEFL Commute, Season 6, Episode 2, Truth or Lie? Let's get started. Hey, Lindsay.
Hey, Shaun. How's it going?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'm surprised by the sunny day that's kind of here. Hence the joy in my voice. How are you? How's Spain today?
Yeah, sunny as always. Sunny as always. Welcome, by the way, to our listeners. If you're a first-time listener, you are listening to the TEFL Commute podcast. This is a podcast for language teachers that's not about language teaching, but the topic seems to always come up. And your hosts are, well, I'm Lindsay Clanfield, and
I'm Shaun Wilden. And if you haven't realised, we record this in different places. So I'm in Oxford, and Lindsay's in Spain. Or are we, Lindsay?
Oh, yes. This episode is called Truth or Lie. And so we thought we'd be addressing the whole issue because it's very du jour, very apropos for using two French words there.
Look at you.
I know, yeah. Feeling all French today. To talk about truth and lies and we could in fact relate this to language teaching, but I thought we could start off. We were talking the other day informally, Shaun, about truth, post-truth, and all that.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no such thing as a lie anymore, is it? Because it's all either post-truth or fake news, surely.
Yeah, well, that's what was very interesting. As I was at a conference last year on a panel, and the person convening the panel, we all kind of had to get up and talk about the communicative approach. Does it need to be replaced for, a new generation of language teachers, replaced or refreshed or dropped or whatever? And people were saying, so how should we start? What should we say? And the convener or the moderator said, oh, you can say whatever you want these days. Everything's just, we're in the post-truth age. Just make it up as you go along.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, it semes to be that way, although I guess in a lot of teaching we do actually make up as we go along. But
as we will see later on in our episode.
As we do. We'll get to that. But without wishing to give airtime to various politicians, I do think the post-truth world is very interesting for language, because we've had this, language develops because of, I think, obviously with a lot that's happening, things get repurposed, words get made up. We've talked before about how technologies influence words, but in this case, we see politics seem to be taking a lead in language influence. Post-truth was the word of the year last year.
It is a new, I guess it's a new word, isn't it? Post-truth.
So,
the post-truth as sort of, what's that like, as an adjectival phrase, the post-truth era, right? It's usually about a time.
I like the post-truth. We're in the post-truth era. And then, of course, you've got things that go along with that. So you've got fake news, which we'll probably get to in more detail in a moment. But I was quite interested. I like words. I was kind of trying to think of words that have come into the dictionary because of the current political time. The other obvious one, which I think was a contender for word of the year, was alt-right, which I think is a euphemism more than anything else. And I think I go along with the people that say we should say what alt-right really is. But anyway, there are other things that have entered the dictionary. Ones you probably heard of, obviously, from a campaign trail. We have drain the swamp, which has taken on this kind of more figurative meaning now, to get rid of all the moneyed politicians and stuff, wasn't it? The self-interest.
So is this? Are these coming into the dictionary?
They're all contenders for the Oxford Dictionary. I took it from the Oxford word site. Okay. I'll give you some more. A couple more. Clicktivism, which I find quite interesting. Do you know clicktivism?
So wait a second. Drain the swamp I'm familiar with, as I am with alt-right. Clicktivism, is that like activism by clicks? So by liking things on Facebook and stuff like that?
Yeah, and essentially that, and trolling. You do your political bit by being online and not doing more than that. So it's almost it's a negative implication of foes.
So collectivism can be for either side of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay.
So collectivism. One which I've always I've always liked the word sheeple, which entered the word people that follow other people are sheeple.
Sheeple. Yeah.
But
okay.
And one of this we've got in terms of political thinking now that's entered the dictionaries, herd mentality, which I quite like.
Oh, the herd mentality. Would this also fit with probably another one that I was hearing a lot in the last 2 years, the filter bubble?
Well, the filter bubble is more, I guess the echo chamber filter bubble. Being a techno person, I was thinking of filter bubble immediately, what Google does to you when you search. And a couple more to throw in, which are contenders are to otherize.
To otherize. Okay, yes, so otherizing. Yes, okay.
So treating people as putting people into categories, that otherizing them for your own political gains, and haterade.
Haterade. Now, I've never heard this one. What is haterade?
So to have a haterade is just basically to go on a rant, a hate-filled rant is a haterade.
Okay.
It's excessive negativity, criticism, or resentment, and you'll find it already in the Urban Dictionary, which where a lot of these
haterade. Is it haterade a bit like written like Gatorade?
Yes,
hate. It's tirade.
It's hate and RADE together.
Oh, haterade. Yeah. Okay.
The example from dictionary, oxforddictionaries.com is drink the haterade. If you drink the haterade, you will find yourself poisoned with gossip. Or another use was have photograph receive some haterade. Which was obviously excessive negativity. So I think it's quite interesting. I mean, I don't think we should spend any more time talking about the politics of our time, because this is supposed to be a joyous podcast on the way to work rather than a political thing. But I do think it's interesting how those words, how language has been influenced by what's going on around us with it.
Yeah, and certainly with the whole fake news thing. I mean, that has also, I would imagine that many language teachers are becoming more attuned to that, and indeed probably preparing lessons, or at least it coming up in class, the whole area of fake news. You'd like to think so. I mean, reading. And
I think it fits in nicely. I mean, when we talk about ways, I think both you and I agree that this phrase "21st century skills" is a little bit trite these days, given it's 2017. But this all underpins the idea of critical thinking and stuff, and I think that's where fake news fits in very nicely with that. In that essence, that I think it does aid us teaching critical thinking with our students. But shall we bring in James, because I think James actually probably knows more about fake news than both of us.
I think so because he has written something about it on his blog. Yes, yeah. Well, let's hear what James has brought to the podcast today.
Those of you who don't know who we're talking about, James is the man behind the scenes and occasionally makes an appearance on a mic. So hi, James.
Hello, chaps.
Yes, James is the third wheel on our bicycle.
Oh, is that why we never go in a straight direction? Now
he's the one in front. He's the one in front of our tricycle. He's the front wheel.
Take that as a compliment.
Indeed, he's the front wheel of the trike, and we are the two ones. Anyway, let's get back to the matter at hand. Welcome, James. Welcome, and
thank you very much.
You had something to share with us about fake news.
Well, yeah, I did on my website. I did a lesson plan about fake news, and it's. I've also done I have a talk that I'm doing, a presentation about how I think fake news gives English teachers an opportunity to do something very interesting with our students. So yeah, it's something that I find fascinating, and I think it gives us a really good opportunity to do some worthwhile, interesting things in the classroom.
Interesting things such as?
Well, as you mentioned, I think that it's just like you. I'm, the bit 21st century skilled out.
Okay.
In that, I don't really see the point of a lot of that, but I think this is actually a genuinely useful skill for this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think.
Which is the ability to critically analyze texts, and to be able to step back from the information that we receive and think about, okay, where is this information coming from? What perspective, what biases does it have? And, being more sophisticated readers. And I think, well, I'm thinking that as a skill, if that's going to happen in our education system, where does it really belong? you know. And then I thought, well, you know, it belongs in the English classroom.
I think you're right.
Else.
I mean, in many years ago, I guess before the rise of the internet, I mean, the old CPE exam, the proficiency exam of the early 90s, you had to actually be able to tell bias in text, and then it kind of disappeared. So in a sense, we're coming back round to it, and I think it is an important skill for language teachers to be able to instill with their students. Certainly, since most of the texts they probably access in the real world these days are online. And I think if there's one good thing that's come out of the fake news, it's this idea of it has heightened people's attention to bias again, which perhaps went away. In the old days, I mean, I used to joke, in the old days, you could always tell that in the UK because of the size of the newspaper. But online, you could never do that. So it's quite good. Sorry, I've got on my political platform there, haven't I? Back to you, James.
No, so I think there's lots of interesting elements to it. I mean, I think one of the things I would say about it is that as the teacher, our role is not to be political at all, really, when we discuss this. So we think of it as teaching a skill, not as teaching an opinion or a particular point of view. So when I've taught this thing, I don't go in, you know, like telling my students, like, okay, today's the lesson where you all learn to think like me. You know, obviously I'm exaggerating, but
the reason I'm laughing,
it's just about teaching skills.
The reason I'm laughing is because in the UK at the moment there's a program on that we did. There's this fly on the wall documentary we do every year, which is inside a state school, and it's and this year it's in Manchester. And in the first episode, which is a brilliant episode, you should watch for all manner of reasons. But in the first episode, the teacher was caught on camera saying Compert saying how Trump was like Hitler, and like the internet went crazy about how dare the teacher say those kind of things and this, that, and the other. So it just made me, what you said just reminded me of that.
And he's brought us off on another segue.
I know, I'm good at that, aren't I?
Let's get back to the first wheel on our bicycle.
That's why we go round and round and round.
Yes, exactly. So, James, you were going to bring us some examples or some questions or?
Well, I know how much you like a quiz, especially Shaun. He loves
quiz.
Shaun loves his quizzes, and so do I.
One of the good things about this whole fake news era is the huge amount of resources there are online for us to use as teachers. There's tons of stuff for us to go and adapt. And shameless self-promotion. If you go to my blog about this on my website, there is I put a list of loads of links for things as well as my lesson plan.
We let him on for 2 minutes and he turns into a self-promotion part. Yeah.
We will be including listeners. We will be including links to all of these in the show notes, and it is a worthwhile thing to read.
Aww.
Thank you. A rare moment of sincerity. I appreciate it.
But was he being sincere?
Let us get us onto this quiz so that Shaun can demonstrate
how much you love
his
a quiz.
Yeah.
So let's get on with it. So cue the music.
Scooby Dooby Doo, where are you? We got some work to do now. Scooby Dooby Doo, where are you? We need some help from you now. Come on, Scooby-Doo, I see you, pretending you got a sliver. You're not fooling me, 'cause I can see the way you shake and shiver.
So for this quiz, I thought I would, for a change, I thought I would put you two together to be a team instead of you competing.
Ooh, okay. A collaborative. It's a collaborative venture.
So it's you two against me.
Okay.
But he's got the answers.
5. Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you get it right, you win, and if you get it wrong, then it's to me.
Okay.
So I've got 5 stories here, and your job is to tell me if this is a real news story, or if it's from an episode of Scooby-Doo.
If it's from an episode of Scooby-Doo,
yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Can we Google?
Is this a real story?
We're not allowed to ask. We're not allowed to ask questions like the sources because it's either real or it's Scooby-Doo. Right. Those are our two sources.
You just got to listen to the story and decide together. Do you think this is real news or Scooby-Doo? Okay. All right. So, number one. A man was apprehended for pretending to be a 150-year-old miner, scaring people out of a town in the American West. He wanted to drive down property values to buy the entire town as a place to store his oil, which he had been storing in the mine.
Okay,
Think, guys?
Sean, we get to confab. I think that's Scooby-Doo, and I think I've seen that episode too. Oh, so Sean, are we gonna be unified on this?
For once, let's be unified. Okay,
Scooby-Doo,
and that is correct.
Oh,
that is a Scooby-Doo episode. The second story: police were baffled by the case of the silent grandma. In what may have been the perfect crime, an elderly woman who sat entirely still for an entire afternoon got up while a cash box was unattended and walked away with it, undetected by security.
That's brilliant. That's got to be a real news story.
That's brilliant, and that's true. That's got to be true. I think that's going to happen. That would. Where's the cash box? I wonder. Did you do this in a shop?
But Scooby-Doo things aren't never like that, are they?
No. It's too. It's a little. It's quirky and a bit mundane for Scooby-Doo. Yeah. You can't imagine them running around after this very still lady. No, I'm going to say. Let's say real.
Yeah.
And it's 2-0 for you.
Oh,
yes, that's right. It's a real story.
All right. I wonder if our listeners are saying this is a really easy quiz.
Well, we'll see. Okay, next one.
Let's see. All right.
At a snowboard contest in the mountains, competitors and visitors alike were frightened when some of the snowboarders went missing. Olympic medalist Chris Klug was noted for helping in the investigation.
Oh, it's got to be real. Have you ever seen a snowboard episode in Scooby-Doo?
No, I haven't. No, that's true. I've never seen a snowboard. Yeah. And Chris Klug, I'm not going to Google. I'm deliberately not typing and Googling anything here.
All right. So real.
Okay. So let's say it's real. That's real.
And that is a Scooby-Doo episode.
No. Did they bring Scooby-Doo back then? Because Scooby-Doo, I mean, like...
Well, this is the Scooby-Doo reboot.
I guess, yeah. I don't know.
I'm going to have to Google that as soon as we finished.
Don't worry.
Sorry, Lindsay, I led you down the garden path there, didn't I?
Yeah,
I can't remember snowboards in Scooby-Doo.
I have sources.
It must be the reboot, because in the 70s, there were no snowboards. Were there?
I hope it wasn't. I hope Scrappy-Doo wasn't in the episode as well. Ruined it for me.
Don't bring up Scrappy-Doo. Okay. Don't bring him up. Because that's the whole other can of worms. Okay. Next story. You ready?
All right. So it's 2-1.
2-1. Spite motivated a woman to pretend to be a ghost to haunt the occupant and manager of an ancient castle in Europe. The ghost, who worked as an employee at the castle's cultural centre, was apprehended for causing mysterious sounds and damaging the property.
I want
Scooby-Doo for
sure.
No,
it's real.
And
it's
it
real.
Worked
it's
too.
Real. It's real.
Oh, wait a second. We're disagreeing.
I think that one. I think it's James playing with us. I think that one sounds so Scooby-Doo. It's got to be real.
Oh, right. This is one of those ones where, like, a Scooby-Doo story that's so amazing.
It's got to.
And it's true.
I don't mind though, Lindsay.
No. I'm going to go with you.
Oh no.
I'm going to go with you. And we're going to say it's real because this might be the trick question. It's real, James.
Okay.
It's real.
And the answer is, it is a real story. Yes.
Oh, Sean, you did it.
Excellent. Sean sprung the trap there. Okay. So,
all right.
3-1, I think. Yeah, 3-1 to you.
Right.
Okay. And last one. An unusual disguise allowed a man to successfully rob a bank. He duct taped branches to himself and, disguised as a walking tree, left the bank with an undisclosed amount of cash.
This is real.
Doesn't that have to be Scooby-Doo? Come on. Wait, disguise himself as a tree and rob the bank.
Yeah, it's real. All right, well, you go with what you want.
We already have 3 points,
we've won,
right?
so it doesn't matter.
Okay. So I'm going to, I might be committing I'm going to say that's a Scooby-Doo thing, because that doesn't really, have you heard this story?
I don't know. For some reason, it kind of rings, it rings, but it might be from, I've covered that.
Scooby-Doo.
From Scooby-Doo, right.
I'm going to say Scooby-Doo. I'm going for it. Scooby-Doo.
And you're wrong. It's a real story.
Oh, Sean, I'm sorry.
Well, anyway, you won 3-2.
Clanfield with the foul in
just for self-satisfaction, I just Googled it. It's the 10th of July 2007. Man robs bank disguised as tree.
There you go. See,
How on earth?
Yeah, well done. I think what we've learned from this is Shaun's critical faculties are well advanced there. That Lindsay,
or just his Saturday morning cartoon
yeah, one of the two. But
Lindsay needs to work on his detection of
what's less Scooby-Doo.
I think.
Of tropes in Saturday morning cartoons.
Right, thanks, James. That was interesting.
I should just say before we continue that is a quiz I took from Mental Floss, and we'll put the link in the show notes.
Brilliant.
So,
I can be quite, as long as your students know who Scooby-Doo is, then that works quite well.
yeah. So there you go. And there's a list of all the episodes and of all the sources for the stories and everything as well. So you can actually adapt it really well for class. So there you go. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, James.
Congratulations on your victory.
Thanks.
Yeah. Right. Shall we take a quick break and then come back and look at how truth or lies might influence language teaching?
Producer James here with a quick message to say thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to show your support for the show, then you can help us in just a minute and it won't cost you a thing. Think of a friend or colleague you know, someone who you think would enjoy listening to the program, and send them an email or a message to let them know about us. With your help, we can reach even more teachers. Okay, on with the show.
Okay, everybody, we're back again now in our episode on truth or lie. Thought we would take a turn now from the world of post-truth and fake news and everything, and actually the topic is about to come up, the topic of language teaching. And Shaun, I was thinking when we were preparing this episode of the truth and lies that we tell as language teachers about grammar, because this is an area that has been discussed and ripe for debate, discussed, argued, debated, and so on. And that's the kind of the grammar rules, the whole idea of truth and grammar rules, right? So, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is that I was thinking about is there's the classic prescriptive grammar rules, which are not necessarily true, and they're not borne out by usage. So, for example, you never end a sentence with a preposition, never split an infinitive, never begin a sentence with but, and so on. Those are prescriptive rules that says how we're supposed to use the language, but they're not necessarily true because of usage. But I'm more thinking of the rules which in usage aren't necessarily true, but they become convenient lies that we tell students for various pedagogical reasons.
And to cover up the fact that we're lying, we call them pedagogical grammar rules,
Yes, they are either called pedagogical grammar rules or rules of thumb. And for the critics, they're called flat out lies, although they're not. There's always a grain of truth.
I guess it depends how deep you want to get, because it's the idea of rules and whether the word rules itself is actually true. Whether we want to talk about.
And to be fair, I think the way the rules are sometimes written are hedged to cover the fact that it might not be always true. But I'm going to give you one, and then I want you to try to brainstorm one. We'll see if we can brainstorm a few, and our listeners can be trying to think as well ahead of us of what grammar rules do we teach that aren't entirely true, and this could be for good reasons. So it could be like lying for a good reason. And sometimes maybe not for a good reason. So I'm going to start with the classic one that most teachers trip up on after you've been teaching a little while, and that's the rule for some or any. So the rule, the quote-unquote lie rule, the untrue rule, is that we use some only in, affirmative sentences, and any only in negatives and questions, right? So you say, I don't have any, or do you have any?
Yeah.
Right?
This one amuses me because I mentioned this before in a previous episode, but I taught the same class at elementary, then pre-intermediate level, where of course the rule changes, and they were like, "Hang on, last year didn't you say that?"
Yes, exactly. But this is one of those classic ones where it does become, if you start at a very low level teaching, actually you can use some in questions when the expectation is that there is some already. It just becomes an appalling mess. A hot mess, I think, would be another word to call that. So, some and any.
Well, I think the other one is, class, in English there are 3 conditionals.
Okay, yes, this has been punctured by various writers, hasn't it? I mean, Swan has taken a big shot at this, and I've heard Thornbury, other grammar writers saying there are not three conditionals. Give us some examples.
Oh no, you're going to test my grammar. Well, so.
Oh no, I won't test your grammar. But let's. I mean,
we got the first, the second, the third,
the second, the
mixed,
third. Yeah, and then
you've got the always true, zero. We've forgotten about.
Yeah. But then you've got the if I would have known, I would have told you. Which is that wrong? Is that right? Is that a new usage? And so on. Okay, so there are three conditionals. Lie. Okay. Here's another one which is interesting and which actually we still do always teach and you don't always get caught up on. And then it's the idea is that there is only followed by singular things and there are followed by plural. But increasingly, and I'd have to look up examples, you're getting an example of there is contracted as theirs. Is that
because it's spoken English?
So, for example, there's hundreds of people. Yeah. There's hundreds of people outside. Don't go outside, John. There's hundreds of people there. So imagine, or there's tons of garbage on the floor.
Yeah.
For example, there's tons of papers everywhere. Sounds actually kind of okay, but that's breaking the rule. So does that mean that our rule is untrue, or is their usage changing?
Or are people just becoming lazy?
Or is the word there are becoming combined into one word, like the French il y a or the Spanish I to denote existence, and that word is there.
What about just move it on? The one caused primarily by a fast food chain, I think, and it's become an example in most classrooms since. I'm loving it.
Oh, yeah, of course. The untrue rule that we teach is that stative verbs never can be put into a progressive or continuous form. Or in other words, you can't put an ing on words like love, feel, understand, etc.
It's interesting because you actually hear, I don't know if it's because of the fast food chain or but you hear this loving all the time now. It's just...
Oh, yeah, no, I think you're hearing it for other things. You're also hearing things like, this now sounds entirely correct to me. If I say, Shaun, let me see if I'm understanding this correctly. So I should say the rule says, let me see if I understand this correctly. But that we're making that more progressive. I'm understanding this, or I'm loving that little black dress.
I didn't think you noticed,
for example. Yeah. Anyway, so that's another one. That's a rule that is slowly becoming more and more untrue. Any other ones?
An obvious one again. I think a lot of this happens at low level. This generalization that we've, for example, are you friendlier or more friendly? Because two syllable adjectives, you're supposed to have different rules with comparative adjectives. Is it he's a friendlier person or is he more friendly? Which is correct?
Yeah. But isn't it with words with ends with Y always are IER? Because same thing with happy then. So I think the rule is, I don't know if that is an untrue rule or if it's covered. If it's covered because it's a Y ending. But
I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna examples
of two syllable.
Came into the top of my head.
Oh, yeah. We just had a hiccup here on our grammar section. we didn't research it enough.
I'm not sure. Now I would. I'm just
okay.
Just give me a moment to think. If a two syllable adjective
is that euphemism for Googling?
If a two syllable adjectives ends in a consonant plus the Y, we drop the Y and add IER. That's the rule. So we should say friendlier, and we say more friendly.
So it's true. Yeah. All right. So yeah. Okay. But we do say more happy. But you could say I'm a lot.
Can somebody help us with our English? Gosh, how many years have you been teaching? Okay. Let's move on.
I'm going to bring us back to another rule, which is another rule which I've seen people get their knickers in a twist on, which is must is for obligation from within yourself and have to is only for external obligation.
I've always gone, what? And then sit there going, no, do I have to do it or must I do it?
That's always been a rule where I've just... Yeah. I think again, there's as with lots of these rules, there's a grain of truth in them. But sometimes, if that rule is explained a bit awkwardly, it just does sound like BS.
Yeah, but I'm always thinking. I mean, we make this rule, but do people really take that thought when they're saying it? when you're using that construction, do people go, "Oh, is it?
No.
Do we not? Is it? I mean, if we've acquired the language rather than learnt the language, do we naturally default to must instead of have to? I don't think so. But anyway,
no, I think,
one more.
No, I think that maybe
I've got one more.
Done quite a bit of grammar.
Let's do one more because it's an obvious.
Let's finish with one more,
and it's like must and have to. It causes a real issue when you teach it. What about will and going to?
Someone cue like a lightning sound or a scream. That is the worst. It's the worst to teach, and it's even worse to write. As a materials writer, I hate writing, coming to a part where I have to write something. I hate writing the will versus going to.
Look at those black clouds, Lindsay.
If at all possible. Yes, of course, the rule we're talking about is that will is for, there are a couple. One is that will is for predictions and going to is for intentions, which becomes problematic when someone says, isn't my intention a bit like a prediction? Secondly, is the rule is that will is for predictions and going to is for predictions, but only when there is evidence of the prediction that is there. So the classic example is, look, black clouds, it's going to rain. Or be careful, you are going to trip on that, piece of wood sticking out of the floor or whatever. But the more you look at these rules, the more they start unraveling. The more examples you try to put.
So often, will and going to is the start of a whole future minefield, though, isn't it? I mean, this is to say that.
Yeah. Yes, with one of the quote unquote lies being
exactly. You asked
the future tense.
I said to the group of students I was working with the students, how do you make the future in English? They all went will, and like, nah, not really. Anyway, we've turned our podcast into very much talking about English language, haven't we? I think we need a break.
Yeah, I think we need the angels.
People who like to plan for destiny like to trust the education system.
All right, we're on to the third part of our podcast here on Truth or Lie at the TEFL Commute. And sticking to language teaching, we were talking about grammar, which is, of course, a part of language teaching. But I was also thinking, Shaun, how much truth and lies actually become a part, or how much they are in our methodology as well. So I'm thinking of classic activities. So like let's start with classic comprehension. One of the most classic comprehension questions for reading or listening comprehension is true or false. So detect the false sentences and the true sentences. So that whole true false is a big part of our daily lives, right? So like making sure someone's understanding. So you end up writing, if you're making a test or writing material, you have to write untrue sentences about a text that they have to then detect. Yeah. And then there's the second part of that, which is the true false doesn't say, or true false not given. Are you familiar with those kind of exercises?
How many times have we written them, Lindsay? We're criticizing things we probably created ourselves.
Well, no, I can't. Again, I hate writing those. I hate teaching them. I hate explaining to students, because every once in a while, the difference, you have to be really careful about what the difference is between false and it doesn't say. So that's quite horrible. Or two of these sentences are. Both of these sentences are true. One is more true than the other, or both these sentences are correct, but which one is the most correct?
I know we turn people into serial liars by making them create exercises where they have to say one true thing or two true things and one lie, those kind of...
Yes, that's another classic example of how like truth and lies, and I was thinking about it, does lying create more engagement? Because a lot of the kind of activities that we do is sort of like, as a teacher trainer, we'll say, if you want to make something interesting for the students, you're going to tell them a story about yourself. But to give them a reason to listen, you say, one of the things I said in my story isn't true. So you have to listen out and guess what the lie is. And that is the idea, to create engagement.
But it also is, it is creating engagement, and it also is quite a handy way of getting into some kind of less controlled practice. If you've just done present perfect, right? 3 statements, one is true, one is false. So, and then I think there's a reason for it, but it's interesting how much we do use this concept of not true within language teaching. I remember with truth or lie. I remember the first time, in my very early days of being a teacher, about being warned about because it is such a useful activity, but it was like, some cultures won't like it. If you're teaching some cultures, you're encouraging them to lie, and it really made me think, because I use the activity quite a lot, but as yet I've never actually come across a nation that don't like me using it. But
nation or a culture or anything, I haven't had that problem either. Although I can see why somebody might think that, but I haven't run into that problem. Of course, there's another one of the classic ELT activities about lying, and that's the game of alibi. If you're not sure, maybe listeners will know it by another name. Maybe it has other names. And the classic activity is you send 2 students out of the class, and they have to concoct a story to explain what they were doing last night when a crime occurred. And then you invite one of the students back in, and all the other students ask them questions like, so what were you wearing? Where did you go with your friend? What did you eat? What did you do next? What time was it? And so on. And then you call in the second person, ask the same questions, and try to catch them out in an inconsistency or a lie. A bit like a Senate hearing into collusion or something like that. so just to circle us back to where we began.
Right back to the beginning again, aren't we? Yeah, fair enough. So basically, truth or lie has a lot of bearing on the English language teaching profession. Is that what we're saying? Is that our conclusion to this?
I think that is our conclusion.
To this episode.
Believe me, I think it is. Believe me.
Okay, I will never believe you because you like fake news. How's that? No, right. Shall we let them go?
I think we'll let them go. I think people's commutes are coming to an end.
Okay. Lovely speaking to you, Lindsay. Spot the lie there.
All right. Okay.
See you next time.
See you guys next time. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
As your commute is coming to an end, here's an idea you can take into your class. In the episode, we talked about how lying is used in classroom activities. So in that vein, here's an activity to encourage one of the students to lie. The activity can be used as a warmer and as a way to give some students picture description practice. At the beginning of the activity, choose 4 students and ask them to go to the front of the class. Now put the rest of the students into 4 groups. The groups will listen to the 4 people in turn describing a photo. However, one of the 4 will not be describing a real photo, and the class has to find out which. Take the 4 chosen students outside the classroom. This is so that the rest don't hear the activity set up. Ask 3 of them to take out their mobile phones and find a photo on the phone that they're happy to talk about. Tell the 4th person to imagine a photo. This student must stick with the same imaginary photo for the whole exercise. Tell them they're going to describe their photo to each group in turn for a minimum of 30 seconds. The group will also have the chance to ask yes/no follow-up questions. Give the students a few seconds to prepare themselves and then make sure they put their phones away. Send 1 student to each group and get them to describe their image. Allow a further 30 seconds for follow-up yes/no questions. The students rotate around the groups until each group has heard every student. They must then decide which student is not describing a real photo. Take a vote before the students reveal which one of them had photos and which didn't. You can find the instructions for this and our other end of pod activities at our website, www.teflcommute.com. You've been listening to the TEFL Commute, an original podcast produced and presented by Lindsay Canfield, Shaun Wilden and James Taylor. Don't miss out on any episodes by subscribing to us on iTunes and by visiting us at www.teflcommute.com.